Well, welcome back. I'm here with Kathy Bonchek from CCB. I'd like to talk about communication as a skill itself. I know that for me personally, I never really thought about communication skills as something to be developed or thought of until I started working with you, Kathy. So talk to me a little bit about how you train someone like me, adult like me, to think about communication as a skill.
Yeah. Well, the things I love that you say it in that way, because I say that what we see a lot of in business in general is that we hire brilliant minds and we send them into meetings without any preparation or thought, and we just expect brilliance to happen. And it does, but clarity doesn't always happen. So what you can do as a communicator is you can really increase your impact of your message being engaged with and memorized and repeated. Because very often what we want for our messages is that they get carried on beyond us. And so when you look at communications as a skill, you have to think about every good communication is like a good story. It has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. And we forget that. I see a lot of middle, a lot of information being exchanged, but the beginning is getting somebody ready to listen to you. It's making sure that people are engaged before you start. People don't listen 100% of the time. We forget that. We jump into meetings, we start doing content. We need to have that moment of, are we all settled? Here's the agenda, what we hoped to cover today. Is that the right direction? Here's some things that might distract you. Let's get rid of all of that. And then we can talk about the important meat of this meeting. There's a way in to it. And we should give that its own art and arc and some time. And, you know, we were talking in another conversation about fire hosing and all of that information that comes spewing out of some types of communicators. We need more pausing in general. And so the idea that you even leave, I always say to people, if you're a nervous communicator or you get something, it's very important and you're getting yourself anxious about it, you need to rehearse the beginning and the end more than just the middle, because the middle is where most of the content resides. And here's all the facts, and here are the figures, and here's some more of the story. But the beginning is that elegance. It's like you're welcoming someone to your home. You're having a lovely dinner. You don't just say, come on and let's go eat. You say, welcome to my home. Well, maybe.
You say that, but you know, it's a very difficult point, because if you have a 5-minute pitch, for example, as we have on the pitch competition on the Friday of our event, but if you have a 5-minute quick pitch, you don't have a whole lot of time for hanky-panky. You know, like when we're coaching our pitch club companies, I tell them, I don't want the Parade magazine backstory. I want you jumping in right into where we are, but you're saying you can still set the stage ahead of time in a different way.
You can still set it as a driver and say, today's the meeting that we're going to talk about the best deal ever. We're going to get right down to it. Before we do, everybody get a seat, get yourself ready. Let's go. It has to be just a nod. I always say to people, you may be in the middle of a presentation with multiple speakers, and you're not going to stop, and you're not going to pass the baton to me, and I'm going to say, hi, I'm Kathy. And I'm, but I might just say, thank you, Mike. And I'm really excited to tell you about page 10, and go into it. And that's the beginning.
That's
it's
sufficient.
Not just leaping into, and so there's artistry and there's observation and how much time do you have and what's needed. So of course you have to have different skill sets and how you manifest that. But I do think that thinking about that is, let me make sure people are actually listening. Because what if you say your most brilliant thing in the first 30 seconds and no one was paying attention? Yeah.
Very good. So that's the beginning. We know the middle is content heavy. Let's talk about the end. Like, what do you mean by the end?
Well, let me just touch on the middle for a second.
Sure, sorry.
Things that you and I talk about all the time is that people do tend to give too much information. And I'm on a mission to really get people to be more concise. And I have a method of suggesting that we do things in threes. So either 3 subject boxes, and that people can remember the concepts. And then you tell the information. And at the end, I like to have this reiteration. What are the key messages? What's my summary? And
yeah, we talk about that a lot. We talk about the 3 words, 3 phrases. I talk about repeat everything twice, and I talk about having one goal from your meeting. So the 3-2-1 methodology. But I appreciate that. Yeah, 3 was also, there's a lot of work being done that 3 is the cognitive limit of a human mind in terms of actively remembering these ideas. So how do we break down those 3 points then? How do we make sure we stay on topic?
Well, what you do is you look at what you're communicating and you say, what are the 3 main concepts that I want this audience or this individual or this team to really understand before we leave today? And I really, after doing this for 20 something years, I can get anything down to 3 main concepts, but I think it's a really good exercise. Because the way you've done it and articulated, I love, which is, here's the information part. What's the real goal? Wow. And what are the 3 ways that are going to lead us to achieve this goal or this action or this outcome? Then it's really a very clarifying exercise. If you need to have 4, that's not saying you can never have a 4-part agenda or a 4-part mission. It's just, you know, that you're fighting against people's ability to hold that much in their head.
Exactly. I tell people, if you've got more than 4, you've defined one of your 3 incorrectly. Like,
Very
you
likely.
haven't defined your 3 properly if you're on 4, or certainly if you get the 5. Like,
Yes.
never get the 5. Okay, I'll sometimes give you a nod on 4, but never 5. I've got my 3 ideas, my 3 words, my 3 phrases.
They should have almost 3 distinct energies, or maybe emotional pitches.
Okay.
You know, not everything is exciting. I hear the word, I'm so excited. I hear that phrase too much and too frequently, and I don't believe it when I hear it. And so we should really think about what's the emotional underpinning of each of these sections of a message.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So like, I would have excitement. I would have gravitas. I would have what?
Well, you
like
might have
action?
security. You might have safety. You might have, we've done a great deal to ensure that this is a safe and wonderful discipline or product. So that it might be this emotional security that you're creating. There might be just, no one else has done this ever, and this is what the world needs. This is going to really just set the whole world on fire. So that level of importance that you might be wanting to convey, the enthusiasm for that. And so then also there might be that we are serious people with serious science and vetting and care behind this, but we can really measure up to any kind of test you give us. And
Right.
so that there's a different tonality in how you deliver those kinds of messages.
For those of us that deliver in the expressive space, we kind of drop into that naturally, where we're talking about innovation, we're excited, we're like sitting up, we're like, oh my goodness, we're talking about action, we're ready, like I'm ready to punch somebody, like we're getting some action done.
Right.
And all of these things are natural. But for those of us that are not necessarily naturally there, what a great point of view. So you're suggesting that draw a tone from your own content.
Yes. Look at what you're saying. I mean, I always say that the words often, and we know that the words are not as much of the impact as we think. 93% of your impact is how you're doing it and who you are, which is stunning because we spend 99% of our effort creating words. But the words themselves there are some words that are more important than other words. And we should know those. We should underline them. That's why gesturing and movement adds so much impact to how we present our messages, because it helps people make a word or a phrase or a feeling memorable.
It may also suggest why in the post-COVID era, it's only because of the like Zoom, the conferencing, the video conferencing aspect of our meetings that we've been able to continue to be productive. Imagine a world where we were trying to do all of this over a speakerphone.
That's right. That's right. And the other thing, the only thing, you know, I love the Zoom because it's kept us in touch with the world, but we are losing a certain amount of our warmth. We have to work extra hard to get that through a computer screen. And so there's a little bit of an art and an intent behind that too.
Now let's talk about that end that I was talking about earlier. So what is the end? Like are we saying,
tell you what
see
it's
you
not.
later, goodbye? You know, are we
Well,
talking about a George
it often
Costanza
is.
end, always leave them wanting something? I mean,
People are always so relieved, Mike, that they kind of, you know, they're running out of the virtual room. And the most common thing, and you will hear this every time now after we say this, everybody ends our meetings with, are there any questions? That's not a conclusion. That the questions should have been happening. You're always aiming for a conversational presentation. And that's the biggest mistake that people make, is that they get into what I call presenter voice and presenter mode. You are you, and you are eliciting comment throughout, and the question should be coming. And you might at any point in time say, do you have a question about that? It doesn't make sense. Which part of this excites you the most? But I always leave the conclusion to be, so of all the things we've talked about, I want you to remember this, this, and this, and here's what we should do next. And then you let that mic drop, and you have you have to have a little bit of drama for a good conclusion, and then you need to have some airspace and a pause afterwards.
Got it. So in great time to remember your 3 points, right? So these are the 3 things I want you to take away. We're going to say, these are my 3 points. This is what I want you to take away. And that's it. Thank you very much.
I think of that as summary to a conclusion. So, and the summary is, your agenda might highlight the direction that you're taking the conversation. The summary is, of all the things we talked about, this was the most important aspect that we said. And you do that for a couple of reasons. It's one, because a little healthy repetition makes something memorable. And also because we acknowledge that people do not listen 100% of the time. Right. And so everybody, perks up at the end of something when you're saying, in summary, you have everybody's attention then. So you better own it, and you have it, and then you say it with the conviction and excitement. And I always like to coach my clients that there should be a little bit of an elevation, maybe in pitch and delivery and excitement, and then boom, here's what we should do next.
Right. Use your big room voice at that point. Like you want to get in there and say, this is what I'm doing.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we know in like in work meetings, it's actually, we do this naturally because those of us that are used to having meetings with groups of people where we need to have something done, we say, okay, these are our action items. And so you're giving out your action items to each person, making sure that's being done. So it's very easy for that. But we very often forget to do that in our presentation pitches.
Yes.
But the reality is we need to do that.
Yes. And there's one thing that we didn't talk about that I always do at the beginning of any presentation preparation, which is I write the conclusion first, usually. I like to know where I'm heading. It's sort of like how I'm going to pick my landing. But I also ask all of my clients to have that they hold in their heart and their head their personal objective, not just the business objective, but what they personally want to accomplish in terms of how you want the world to see you, what's your brand, what is it that you want them to trust in you or know about you. And when you're holding that internally, it changes how you present.
Wow, that's great. You know what? Let's talk about that in our next session about branding, communication, and the difference between who you're messaging to and who you're messaging for.
Great.
That'd be fantastic. Well, thanks everyone. And we'll see you next time. This has been Kathy Bonchek and Mike Szymanski, and we hope to see you next time.